We'll be very shortly talking to our counselling psychotherapist and hypnotherapist and family counsellor, for that matter, Dr. Karen Phillip. And Karen willing to take your calls as well. We'll touch on some topics, but if you've been hearing the show, you know the drill. Karen can use her tools and her skills to help people out in all sorts of ways, particularly if you want to break a habit, give up smoking, if you want to lose some weight, if you've got some problems in your personal life, your family life. You can give us a call, 131873. But right now, let's go to Dr. Karen Phillip. How are you, Karen?
I'm wonderful, Warren. Good evening.
Good to hear from you again, as always. Now, we've got plenty of things to talk about, but you particularly wanted to talk about this problem of parents using their mobile phone, or more to the point, mobile phones being banned by some daycare centres when parents come to pick up their kids.
Yes, the story broke during the week. A daycare centre put up a notice on their front door asking parents to not enter the centre with any phones. They said that staff had been witnessing over a number of weeks and months that parents were so engaged in their phone, they basically were ignoring their little kids that would run up in excitement when mummy or daddy arrived. So the centre decided to ban all the phones, and they put a notice up which caused an absolute outraged group of parents, and it went global. And we've been speaking about it during the last week here. But I started thinking, you know what, that's not such a bad idea. I mean, all parents are certainly not the same, and there are, unfortunately, a small group of parents that do seem to be more engaged with their phone than their child. But when you look at it logically, we've banned phones for at least the last 10 years of being used in any swimming pools. You're not allowed to use a phone in a pool, let alone take a photograph. And I'm just wondering why we haven't extended that to childcare centres. Parents have all got smartphones, we've got videos and cameras on our phones, yet we're not permitted to take photographs of other children. We also have a number of children in daycare centres that are under protection of the minister, docs, kids, that sort of thing. Yet we're still not banning phones from inside childcare centres, and I'm really wondering why not.
Yeah, it's interesting how the world has changed that way, and why they aren't banned that way. And there's been other stories around this week on a very similar tangent where they're saying, look, if you should have a discussion with your children before you put photos of them on social media, etc. I mean, it is a great invasion of privacy in many ways, and they're forever. That's the point.
It is, and this is something that we're only just starting to learn now. This is the first wave, if you like, of social media in the last 10 years. So it is still very, very new and it's in its infancy. Asking permission of your, 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, I don't really think that's appropriate.
No, maybe a 10 or 12 or 8-year-old.
Well, when they're perhaps in their early teens, certainly, even 11 or 12, but under that age, children don't have any concept of what you're actually talking about. So it really is up to the parenting skills of the parents in charge of them, of what is in the best interest of their children. Now, we do know that placing a lot of photographs, particularly kids in the bath and things like that, is never appropriate. No. Yet parents do continue to do this. Now, it's just very regrettable that you take a cute photo of your child, you post it up to your friends. The thing is that after that, your friends can then use it anywhere they want.
You lose total control.
Absolutely, and that's the issue that we're only really starting to recognise now.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? I mean, the thing with technology, and we're going to get used to this as well, is it develops at a rate greater than our etiquette develops of how to deal with it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We take a little bit longer to catch up in our intellect than what technology is progressing. So we are really chasing it, and we've got all of our social media, we've got all of our Facebook and our Instagram and all of these sorts of things, and we haven't caught up with it yet.
No, we haven't. Because the etiquette of, say, dinner table manners would have developed over centuries, and yet suddenly we've got the iPhone's just gone 10 years old.
Yes.
And
it's not old at all.
No.
We are experiencing, as you know, and as you've just alluded to, we have so many now different, what could you say, rules within our family at the dinner table and in restaurants. We're having issues with people in coffee shops refusing to serve a person that's on the phone when they're wanting to order.
Yep.
So we really are trying to get our head around it, and I think it's going to take us a little bit longer.
So do I really do. And you're talking about, obviously, the child, in this case, being disappointed because the parents got their face in the phone. The other aspect of this, of course, is the phone or tablet or whatever the electronic device is being used as a pseudo babysitter.
Yes, well, unfortunately, it is. But look, I know when I was a child, we would watch the television.
Yep.
Mum would put it on and we'd watch the television if she was cooking dinner and this sort of thing. So we used to have television as our sort of pseudo babysitter. Now we're using more devices for that. Now, from time to time, that is perfectly fine. Where there's lots of interesting programs on that we can get from Foxtel, from television, for educational games on our tablet devices. So there is still a lot of advantages from a child being engaged to a degree in media, if you like.
Yeah.
The only issue is when we're having the child engaged in it too much, that we're not interacting with them as much as what we should be for their social development and their learning.
Yeah.
And this is the problem. I'm certainly not saying at all, and I would like to think that none of the theorists are saying that we should ban it, because they're actually very advantageous.
Well, I mean, that horse is bolted anyway, let's face facts. That horse is well and truly bolted. Wendy's on the line. G'day, Wendy.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I just want to say that people who use mobile phones are completely addicted to them, and they get quite belligerent if you complain about them talking too loudly, and they also are like sleepwalkers. They walk straight into you.
Oh, that happens too on the footpath, doesn't it? And what I call the public transport trance. Now, admittedly, that existed before we had mobile phones, but the mobile phone's quite convenient just to put your face in that and not have to deal with the fact that you've got somebody standing next to you.
It is interesting, Wendy, because I was out last night at dinner, and there was a couple sitting behind my husband and I at a table. He had 3 phone calls during a course of half an hour in the meal.
Yeah.
And one of those phone calls, he went at length describing how his daughter had been vomiting and throwing up.
Oh, charming.
Because she'd had too much to drink. And I'm trying to eat my meal. I actually couldn't finish my meal. I felt so sick from the descriptive language that he was using. And I thought the least he could do is keep his language level a little quieter.
Yeah,
It was quite loud, and we ended up going outside and just having a drink outside to get away from him.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I don't want us to sound like we're dinosaurs, because I'm sitting here playing with my brand new iPhone 7, which I quite like. But the thing is, it's a matter of time and place, and that's what we've lost, haven't we? And the fact that you can be with somebody face to face, which is a special thing, and the minute that phone rings, it just cuts through, and the person that's really there becomes non-existent, and is, the whole conversation or the space is overtaken by the phone.
It can be. Courtesy is what is seen to be lacking at this stage. Respect and courtesy of others.
Yeah.
And that I think we need to remind ourselves that the person that we're with is the person we're with. We can always return a phone call, we can always return a text message, but when we're with another person, or if we're in public and other people are engaged in personal conversations, we really need to respect their courtesy and not infringe on them as well.
Yep, there we go. Now, another topic that's being reported on the Daily Mail tonight is about the chance you have of stress with children. Apparently, if you have 2 children or more, you're at risk of heart disease. New research found that heart disease it grows after you have the second child, but one child not so much a problem.
I don't know about that. If you've had a difficult first child, I think your stress levels can escalate enormously. A second child, usually the stress is a little less because you know what you're in for. It was interesting. There was a story that came out from China, actually,
Yep.
where they'd had the one-child policy for 35 years. That ended on the 1st of January 2016. Mm-hmm. And they're now finding it very difficult for the Chinese population to actually have a second child because they're choosing not to. They don't want to. they're used to having the one child. So perhaps they have found that it's going to be a little bit more stressful if they have a second child.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I'm not talking about any scientific research or even sociological research, but I have been to China, and it was very interesting to talk to the adult children that, and it's pretty much anyone at that stage in their 20s and below, but adult children in their 20s who never had siblings. That was their life. That's what they knew.
Well, none of them. For the last 35 years, virtually none of them, except for some right out in the country, but none of them have siblings. But what the government in China has now found, that they can no longer afford their elderly population because there's one child that now has to look after and fund two parents.
Yes, yes.
So they're now saying, OK, now we need to have at least two children per couple, so the children can at least afford to look after one parent each. So they're in a lot of trouble over there in China with their ageing population. But as far as our country having a second child creating an additional amount of stress, I really would
question that.
I don't know. I'd argue that because I think when you have a second child, a lot of the times the kids play together. It actually takes the stress off you having to entertain that child fully.
I just also wonder whether people are going to take these sorts of findings and make decisions based on them. For example, it says the number of children should be considered a new factor that may influence the risk of some cardiovascular disease for women and men, and included in research databases to be further investigated is a health indicator. I wonder how crazy have we got if people are deciding how many children they're going to have based on these sorts of studies as opposed to just how many children they really want.
I think human beings are far more intelligent than what this study is perhaps indicating, and I would absolutely refute that we're becoming a group or a community with heart issues simply because we've had two
kids.
Children.
That's exactly right.
No, I mean, our children are there to enjoy. Of course, there's challenges and there's moments, but our children add to our life. They give us a reason to live. They allow us to continue on our way with a purpose. So 2 or 3 children, I think, is far more beneficial than even one.
There we go. Dr. Karen Phillip, now the website, drkarenphillip.com.
Yes, that's correct.
And we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Warren.